Yeah, a long way from a stuttering kid. I didn't get enough love.
Hello, hello, hello. We are here on another episode of the Howman Cry podcast, and I'm very excited to bring into the room a good friend, a good homie, a good mentor, an excellent trash talker, Sir Sinclair. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. Like the tan, you're looking real nice little Barbados right now, man.
Listen, I'm a little chocolatey. We was joking before. I tried throwing a little extra lighting because I wasn't even showing up on the camera. It was looking
Classic.
Listen, I'm gonna give you a brief intro because we have known each other probably
15 years.
it's got to be about 15 years.
Yep.
And you done seen me at some of the young, wilder stages in life.
Still need to write the book. I still need to add a couple chapters to the books.
Listen, and there's information that I will not allow you to share on this platform. I'm gonna kick you right out this room. So, I'm gonna need you to be real selective with the wording out here.
Got you.
No, man, but it's just very, very great to see you, and glad to have you up here to just chat a bit, man. And so would you like to maybe provide a introduction for yourself? Maybe tell the folks a bit about who you are and where you come from and such.
So my name is Sinclair Bayard. I'm now from the Camp Springs of the Prince George's County of Maryland. I was in the Air Force for about 8 years and then went to University of Maryland, got my degree in kinesiology, been a strength coach, health coach for the last 10 years, and been a federal employee working on Bowling and Andrews Air Force Base. I do union work, so I like to defend the people, as I like to say.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Awesome. And I've known you. We've originally were working at a gym together back in the day, the Sports and Learning Complex back in the PGDC area. When I was less of a knucklehead because by then I had started going to college and such, but I used to be wilding out a little bit.
I just loved you. I mean, I've always loved you, but I loved you when you were 19 because it was just a great time because you were really trying to find who you really are, and you were not trying to conform, and then you were really making a real interest in saying look, there's nothing wrong with me liking these things. There might be everything that's being subjective, but I want to find out who I am. So I just loved it. I thought it was the most encouraging thing I ever seen.
Well, I'm glad it looked like that to you because it ain't feel like that to me. I'm sure from your vantage point, it's look at this dude. But I think to me, I was quite confused. I feel like I'm just now really, really starting to get my lane down. And I know that's probably crazy to say, but it's true.
That makes complete sense, though.
You know what I'm saying? So yeah, man, you, sir, as I know personally, you're no stranger to just talking about vulnerability and just mental health and just health in general. So I want to jump right in, man. How do you relate to the word vulnerability?
I think vulnerability is it's like a very transparent trust of yourself. And what I mean by that is that you have to allow yourself to go to some low places to get a grand lesson. And sometimes when we want to hold on to things, we want to hold on to a title, we want to hold on to an image, we want to hold on to an ego, it prevents you from really learning and diving into those areas that you really truly need to be the greater version of yourself or the better version of yourself.
No, I love that answer. You give politician answers today, I see. No, man. So how do you, and I'll bring it out because I'm a big fan of the Wonder Twins. You're a father of two young women out in the world. How do you feel like that word and just that relationship shows up in your parenting and in your everyday?
I think back when the girls were about 8 and 6, And when they were about 8 and 6, I really had to have an understanding of the way that I was raised is not going to work for them. It
Mm.
just wasn't going to work. And I think a lot of times we get bogged into historical abuse. And what I mean by historical abuse, the way your parents were raised, and then how they raised you, then it's saying, well, this is how our family really is. And no one really takes an understanding of saying, these are brand new beings, and I need to figure out what's going to work for them individually. And once I really started to do that, I had to be more transparent. I had to be more vulnerable of just saying, like, look, daddy just doesn't know it. And, sometimes that was a really breaking myself down, where I had moments where I would cry in my car, cry in the bathroom, turning the sink up, like me turning the sink of water up is not going to hear them like knock out, daddy, you all right in there? So
Yeah.
I had to really, let that out. And then when they got a little bit older, maybe like 6 years later, I had to show them like, hey, this is how I deal with loss. This is how I deal with, anguish. Even today, like my youngest, she was like, daddy, when you get frustrated, how do you let it out? And having those real transparent conversations and saying like, hey, sometimes I just drive, or sometimes I just write things out. And then she gave me some suggestions. She's like, you know what? You look like you do great if you journaled.
The Wonder Twins never disappoint.
I know, right?
They're brilliant girls. No, I mean, I think so. I mean, I appreciate you sharing that, and I've seen that in real time, man. I've always been just a fan of how you've approached just fatherhood, and I've shared it a bunch in our personal stories, but I'm just glad that even the world, can see that more and more, because I've always looked at it. To me, it's crucial, and I think even more crucial, especially raising like young women, and you being able to just tap into some of those necessary points. And I mean, coming back to maybe how you grew up and stuff, do you feel like maybe there was support or ways that conversations could have been approached that maybe they weren't? What do you think maybe was missing from your upbringing?
I think what was missing from my upbringing was a couple of things. I didn't know how to deal with anger. Like anger was like, always this thing right underneath the surface. Like, only a few people could really see like behind the stage and say, oh, you like to get mad for real, for real. Like you really are motivated by that. And I remember I would get so mad when I was younger that I would cry. And then people thought that I was, oh, you know, you're soft. I was like, man, I can't trust myself because I don't know how much when this thing explodes, what is it going to look like?
Mm.
So I didn't really know how to deal with anger. And then when you're dealing in a society or a cultural where the only way to suppress a child doing things that you don't want them to do is to be violent, to spank them. So you don't know any other way of expressing it but through violence. So I think one of the biggest things was like knowing how to release some of that tension without losing myself, and then learning what myself looks like, anger, and being okay with it, but knowing where I need to come back to. Because man, once the light got turned on, man, it was on. Like this wasn't coming off. Like the lights are on tonight. Lights are in the nighttime. So I think that was one of the things missing. And then I think like a lot of times we think about like who you're surrounding with. I felt like I was always surrounded because my mom was in the military. So I was always around young men that were in positions, but they didn't really know anything. So you're around 19, 17, 18-year-old men, and they're thinking like they're grown because they're married, but you're 21 years old. And you just didn't really know how and look at someone being a real live grown man doing grown man decisions. And it just wasn't like it wasn't a lot of those things around at the time.
Yeah, no, and that's really insightful, and I can definitely resonate with that. My temper and whatnot was terrible back in the day. I mean, I think, and actually, and you were kind of there to see some of that in terms of me picking up boxing and kind of learning boxing and stuff. Ended up being a really great tool, to help kind of deal with some of that. But if it wasn't for different things like that at different stages in life, I don't know if I would have got a good handle on it, you know. And I think just having mentorship and just men being present is crucially important, even if not directly in the household, just like, you know, peripherally, you know,
Yeah,
for
and your
them to be able.
surroundings. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So kind of on that note, you know, I mean, culturally, do you feel like you were, I guess, what kind of narratives do you feel like you adopted from being a man, maybe growing up to now, you know, or how society has maybe influenced your idea about being a man?
Oh, so first of all, you are not a grown man with the hand claps at 19 years old. Like you are. I used to say that I'm a grown man. You like, man, you don't even have a clue about what is going on. I think for me, I think I have become more patient. I don't know if it's just me getting more gray. Like all of this right here was at least 2 years. This is 2 years. This is recent, but I don't know if it's because of patience with like other younger men that I really can see a lot of things that I was. And you know, I had to really deal with that. It's like sometimes when I would be impatient, it's because some of the things I'm seeing them do now still kind of resides in me. It's just that I don't have a way of expressing it. So I had to
Mm,
really tap into why am I getting angry of someone learning how to be a young man themselves. And then I think now how it impacts me is that I'm still more open of learning on a continuous basis of this is what I really need to do. This is what's working, but just because it's working doesn't mean you can't make it more efficient. You can be
yeah,
a more efficient mind, like how you deal with things. I try to like deal with stuff before where I would just be monotone. I don't want to show anybody any of this. I don't want to show anybody that. But now it's like, look, you should be able to do that. You should show your passions. You should show your frustrations. But it's about the level and the intensity of what you're doing. Like it can still be respected. Like, oh, you didn't go off the rails, but I can see what you're passionate about. And
yeah,
then allowing that exposure to be able for someone to know you. Like this is one of the hardest times I feel like for people to know one another and to expose yourself. Like exposing yourself doesn't make you what less of anything. It makes you even more stronger or more of a braver person during these
yeah.
times.
Yeah, no, and I definitely appreciate that, and I do think that there's a lot of changing within the narrative. I would say, like, growing up in more of the, you know, PG DC kind of area, the overarching, you know, it fits into a lot of the stereotypical male outlooks, I think. And that's probably why I even, you know, resonated to yourself, to you know, Rob, rest his soul, you know, the good homie and mentor. I got to give him a good shout out,
Yeah.
as well as Kesha, too. I just got to give her a shout out, just because, and Marshall, all of them very missed. We had a unfortunate circumstances of just losing a lot of good friends in that period in time.
Yeah.
You know, but the commonality between those personalities and yourself, and I think how we all started to kind of hang out, I think was just around that kind of genuineness of like being okay with, you know, expressing, building together, showing vulnerability, whether we were naming it like that or not. And yeah, I think that's just really powerful.
Yeah.
um so switching gears, you know, a bit, man, like, so for the type of work that you do, and kind of like you're essentially helping, I see through your work that you actually do more than just like the basic kind of health things. It seems like you take a lot into account around the mind, where people are, and really trying to encourage from like a deeper space. Could you maybe just speak to that a bit?
Yeah. So when we were working out, I came out of that whole pool of being like a strength coach for like a collegiate team. Like that was the goal and that was the move. Working with professional athletes, I got super lazy because I didn't have to do a lot of like instructions. I can just say, here's your program, this is what you need to do. And then when I got into doing like testing for like, Air Force personnel, I started realizing like, yo, there's a whole different thing that I'm not aware of. I didn't know about speaking to emotions. I didn't know how to deal with someone not being motivated or driven because professional athletes, they have their own drive.
Yeah,
You don't have to worry about getting them, in the drive mode. You got to know how to do the gear shifts with professional athletes. So I just was And that really bothered me because I was hearing people talking about real life, street life stuff happening. And then that's what made me want to be a strength coach, because I realized that I can give you about how many calories you can eat. I can tell you about workouts. It's not going to change when you don't know how to feed your kids. It doesn't
Yeah.
change anything when you don't know how to tell someone that, hey, I really love you and miss you, and I just want to reconnect with you. Like, if we don't deal with those things and unpack those suitcases, you working out is like a futile point.
Yeah. Is your ringtone disco sounds? Normally I would edit stuff like that out, but I think I'm gonna leave that. Um
Sorry about
what
that,
are you,
yo.
this we got a disco break. I think that was just the universe commending your answer. Um so that brings me to the question, man. And I know, again, just from us kind of personally sharing, that we've both gone through these mental ups and downs and moments of, really having like hard outlooks. And I don't need to bring up anything specific, but I know that you've had to kind of pull yourself up from a lot of different, points of the ashes, or just real life stuff going on. So how do you feel like you do that on the like personal mental health front? How do you motivate yourself and keep yourself going?
I mean, that's a good question, because I had to really kind of reflect on that the other day, because I remember something that you had told me, and it was the most bravest thing that I ever heard. You were like, look, man, I'm really trying to do this, only packs, and I'm trying to push this out. He says, look, you told me I'm gonna go for 1,000 rejections. And if I go for 1,000, I know I'm gonna make it. And I was like, man, I can't deal with one rejection. This dude talking about 1,000. But it motivated me to think, like, just because you get rejected doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you.
Mm,
And that even though you try something doesn't mean that it's going to be successful, but the success is in the information. And I had to start thinking of those things. Like, I'm not losing. I don't have a good day. I don't have a bad day. I have information days. So every day is information for me. So I'm always going to constantly learn about myself, learn about somebody else, and then how that it can make me a better person. And even in those low moments, just identify, like, hey, I'm in a low place. I am so burnt out. And then if I need to
mm,
control alt delete it, hey man, just chill. You don't have to be resilient. You don't have to prove anything that, oh, I can, I grind all day. I'm hustling all the time. You
yeah,
can be grinding yourself down. Literally and figuratively, the word means to grind down.
yeah,
And I had to realize to stop using some of those catchphrase words, because it was putting me in the wrong type of mental space. So
yeah,
those are kind of some things that I kind of figured out on this path, and still trying to figure a lot of that out too.
yeah. No, that's amazing. And yeah, rejection is definitely one that I think even still, I motivate myself with statements, like that, to keep that tone going. But I've had to do a lot of reforming myself around, more surface level kind of like ego driven motivations, and then getting down to the core of, because I
Mm-hmm.
think what you spoke to is kind of a form of self love in a way, which is like really trying to consider where you yourself are, and then trying to support that, and that will end up supporting the goals or whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. Where I think general US tone can be a little flipped from that, where it's like, gotta go get the blah 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 thing, suppress it all
Yep.
down, and go and go get it. So I'll hit the little switch up.
Okay.
So if you're comfortable, would you be willing to share even just a time that you had to maybe express some vulnerability, or a time that you may have cried?
Um, I think one of the first moments I cried when I was really young was when my mom had to go to Germany, and I had to stay with like one of her friends. And I looked at these people, and I was like maybe 8 years old, and I knew like this was not going to be a good situation for me. And my mom was like, you got to toughen up. You got to deal with this. Like at 8 years old, she was literally telling me, toughen up, deal with this. And this is 2 years. You're going to have
Mm,
to deal and be your best for 2 whole years. And I just remember just crying about that. I was like, and I felt like I was being left and that I had to fend for myself.
Mm,
And it ended up being literally like that. Like it was some real street life stuff at 8 years old.
mm,
And I just remember like every time I would go in the bathroom, and I think I started doing that at a very young age, going in the bathroom and start crying. And that's where like that was like my little sanctuary in the house.
yeah.
And it was just, but then I had to suppress it because now you got to put on this new face. You got to come out and act like everything was fine. So one of the things I started to do to put on that face was tell jokes. So I was always making other people feel comfortable and laughing. But on the inside, I didn't feel like any jokes.
Mm,
So like when people would get to know me, like, oh, you're so funny, you're so great. And I was like, but when I got closer, you don't tell a lot of jokes. I thought you just told jokes all the time. I was like, that was the stage. That was just to get me through a lot of things. And
mm.
then I remember when I joined the Air Force, I was wilding. Like you thought you was wilding when you was 19, player. I was in a whole nother country. And that was, anyways, that they were getting ready to kick me out. So I remember crying. I was partying like 7 days a week, but had a real full-time job.
Wow.
And they were trying to kick me out. And I realized that I couldn't, there wasn't no option of going back to Philly at the time. This was
Yeah.
like 96, 97. So I was crying like, I messed up here. Like I
Mm.
need to get myself together. And I remember crying in my room, playing like Ghostface Killer and Raekwon, crying. Turned that joker all the way up, and I'm crying in my room because I didn't know.
On- Only built for Cuban links.
That's right, tears. Like this is the track. But I remember because I didn't know how to ask for help. Like I felt
Yeah.
like asking for help was a weakness. Like everything else I knew was lift weights, fight, handle your business that way. But to say, man, I messed up and I need someone to help me and give me a break. And I just didn't know how to even ask those questions. I just didn't know where to start. So I remember those like some real times crying. And then, as a father, man, I've given a lot of tears
Yeah.
just being a father. Like you really just don't know if you're doing a great job as a parent, and then until like years later or little moments.
Yeah.
But you're really just hoping that they like you and that they understand you, that give you a break. So there'll be a lot of times where you just like, I just don't know how I'm gonna make it. I don't know how I'm gonna get through. But then you gotta release that. I feel like don't look at we look at tears and crying so wrongly. Like the body does everything else to get rid of waste. It gets rid of, like, if you got too much fluid, you urinate, fecal matter. But when you have emotional buildup, that's what tears are.
Yeah.
You gotta release this. There's no way that you can keep all this in, man. You can't. And there's no way that you can go to enough Facebook pages and enough memes to educate you enough to speak to your heart. You gotta really have someone professionally help you.
Mm. I love that, man. Yeah, I think that's just a really powerful statement because I think it's so crucial, and I know you advocate for therapy and just mental health practices in general. So I definitely appreciate you speaking to that because it becomes, and even I think how we're taught in the US sometimes is such a like isolated means of you have to learn how to figure stuff out in that type of way. So I just appreciate you speaking to that. So I have another a question for you, kind of two-part in a way.
Okay.
Um, and this will be your closing questions. I know you got to get back to the, what I'm saying, the gig.
Yeah,
But
I got the newbie life, man. See? Oh, there you go. Newbie life, baby.
out here. So what do you think the world can use more of from men?
I think the world can get more from men when um understanding like men are vulnerable too. Like if we can change the narrative that you can be a strong, vulnerable, educated, or working to strive, hardworking man without it having to be like a big man ZZ Top beard or big bulging muscles. We can just start speaking to that. I think you'll start seeing so much another level of compassion and understanding and empathy across the board. Like we shouldn't have to always rely on women to be compassionate or to be resilient, that we can start to do those same things as well. And I think, but we have to really start to promote this. And that's why I'm like so stoked and so super stoked about this whole movement that you really got, because that's how this stuff works, man. This is how this works. And once you get it working, man, it's like a blank canvas. You don't know what the end portrait is going to be from this, but it's definitely going to be a piece of art that no one's ever seen before. And I think this is a really good first step.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate that, and that's the hope of it. I think we try to keep the mission of it just really simple, which is just to try to help men have better relationships, and that's really the big core of it. So maybe I'll flip that question a little bit. How do you feel? What could the world do to maybe make it a little easier for men to get to that point?
I think you need to have more artists. You need to have more marketing. You need to have more programs at different stages of life. Like we talked about before, like a lot of things happen in 7-year increments. If you can really start to tap into being a responsible young child, a young, adolescent, a teenager, and then really focus on like reflecting on, if I work at a child at 14, this is going to impact them to 28. If I work at a 28-year-old, it's going to impact them to 36. Like knowing like this is incremental, and that it needs to be something in place longitudinal, that we can actually help the development of young men to be independent, great single fathers, partners, different type of categories, how they want to self-categorize themselves, individuals over a long collective time. And I think that's the longer vision. Like the short term is one thing.
You and these disco sounds. Did we lose him? Is he paused here? No, so I very much appreciate it, man. Appreciate the commentary, and thank you for carving out some of the time within your day. Is there any place you want to drop where people can find you, or more about your work or anything like that?
I do like a lot of like health coaching online. Just people can reach out to me, and then Freakwave Health Solutions, and we can start to work on developing better health solutions for each individual person. And it's a really good, like a whole intrinsic thing, not just this is my plan. We really look at what can be important for that individual to help them get better.
Yeah, love it, man. Appreciate it. And thank you again, man. And I can't wait to see you next time I'm home. I don't know exactly when it'll be, but we always link up. So I'm gonna have to hit you when I'm in town. If any of the listeners want to find out more about the How Men Cry project, you can visit howmencry.com, How Men Cry on IG. We're looking to gather 1,000, of these stories to get men just talking about mental health and vulnerability. I don't know what's wrong with me in this number 1,000. Apparently, it just ain't enough for me to pick any number less than that. But we're gonna see. But no, man, I love you, brother, and I'm just so thankful for you in my life and in general, and just thank you so much for even taking this time, man.
Hey, no trip, man. You got some real boulders, little baby boulder shoulders right there. Good
job. Look, we've been out here. We've been out here a little bit, It's the boxing. See, but now I don't even have to try that hard. Now I'm getting older, so what it appears to be muscle, but really it's just layers of fat. You know what I'm saying? So I just
lies, and I don't believe you.
But no, man, thank you so much. And I'm about to kick you out this room so we can play this little outro. But absolutely great to see your face, and hang on after if you can, but if not, go ahead and get moving. But appreciate you again, Sinclair.
Peace out.
All right, guys.
Yeah, a long way from a stuttering kid. I didn't get enough love.